Hey, story lovers. Welcome to another story, and tell me at the end, do you think what happened to Chioma was fair? So subscribe, sit back, and enjoy. Chioma was born into wealth but never knew her parents. From the moment she was born, she was cast aside. Her parents, high-ranking professionals in Lagos, had no time for a child they deemed imperfect. A baby with a curved spine, frail limbs, bulging eyes, she was, in their eyes, an embarrassment, an inconvenience. They never held her, never looked into her eyes. Instead, before she could form her first words, they sent her away to the village, into the care of her uncle and aunt. To Chioma, they were the only family she had ever known. She had never seen her parents, not even a picture. Her aunt and uncle never pretended to want her. They only agreed to take her in because of the monthly stipend her parents provided. As long as the money came in, they fed her, clothed her, and gave her a place to sleep. Barely. She lived in a cramped, windowless storeroom, the walls cracked and damp, the roof leaking whenever the rain poured. Her mattress was nothing more than a thin mat on the floor, her blanket a tattered old wrapper she had long since outgrown. When the money stopped, Chioma's life became unbearable. Her aunt's patience wore thin. The insults began. Her aunt sneered, arms crossed as she towered over Chioma. "You should be grateful we even let you stay here. You're nothing but a useless burden. You eat our food, you breathe our air, and what do we get in return? Misfortune. If it weren't for your parents' money, we would have never taken you in. No man will ever want to marry a cripple like you. Look at you. You look older than me, yet you're only 18 years old. What curse is on you? You are destined to be alone forever." She became the housemaid, scrubbing floors, fetching water, washing clothes, while her cousins went to school, played outside, and laughed with friends. She was never included, never wanted. From childhood, she had tried to make friends. She would smile at the other village children, offer to share whatever little she had, but nobody wanted to be associated with her. One of the village girls wrinkled her nose in disgust. "She's cursed. Have you seen her back? It's crooked." A boy took a step back, as if standing too close to Chioma would doom him. "My mother says I should never touch her. She's bad luck." She spent her childhood in isolation, watching from the shadows as the world moved on without her. She had never celebrated a birthday, never received a hug, never heard words of kindness. Her only companion was a small, cracked mirror she kept hidden under her mat. Every night, she would stare into it and whisper, "I wish I was beautiful. I wish I was beautiful. I wish people could see me." Her aunt's voice echoed in her mind, a sharp blade digging deeper. "No man will ever want to marry a cripple. You will always be alone." For the first time in her life, she wished so hard it hurt. Chioma fell asleep, dreaming of a life she wished she had. At night, she would lie in her tiny, suffocating room, staring up at the crumbling ceiling, dreaming of a world where she was different. A world where she wasn't treated like dirt. A world where she was loved. But deep down, she knew wishes didn't come true. Chioma stole glances at Chide from behind the village well, her heart fluttering with longing. Chide was perfect, nature's finest in Chioma's mind. He was tall and very handsome. His smooth caramel skin glistened under the sun, his deep voice carried authority and charm, and when he smiled, it was as if the world itself paused to admire him. He was respected, confident, effortlessly adored. Boys looked up to him as their leader. Girls whispered his name and adored the ground he walked on. And Chioma? She admired him from the shadows. She knew it was foolish. She knew someone like Chide, handsome, admired, flawless, would never look at someone like her. And yet, every time she saw him, she let herself dream, if only for a moment. She imagined what it would feel like if he looked at her the way he looked at the other girls, if he smiled at her, if he said her name. One afternoon, while fetching water, she was approached by Adonai, one of the most popular girls in the village, and her friends. Adonai called out, her voice laced with fake sweetness. "Chioma, come here. We have something exciting to tell you." Chioma blinked in surprise. No one ever spoke to her unless they needed something. Chioma hesitated, glancing around as if the words weren't meant for her. "Me?" Adonai's smile widened, a little too perfect. "Yes, you. Come." Chioma approached cautiously, her heart pounding. Adonai never smiled at her. None of them did. "Chide wants to see you," Adonai said, swaying slightly from one leg to the other. Chioma's breath caught in her throat. "Chide." What? Chioma stammered. "Yes. He asked us to send you to him. He's waiting at the riverbank." Adonai giggled. "He likes you. He told us so." Naive Chioma felt her knees go weak. It couldn't be real, she wondered to herself. Could it? She searched their faces for any sign of deception, but they were all smiling, excited, eager. Maybe this was real. For the first time in her life, hope bloomed inside her chest. Maybe she was worth noticing. Maybe she was worth loving. She ran home, washed her face, and even attempted to brush her thin, straggly hair. There was little she could do, but she wanted to look her best. This was her moment. As she made her way to the riverbank, her heart pounded so hard it almost hurt. Would he be kind to her? Would he tell her she was special? Would he like her? But the moment she arrived, she knew. They were all waiting for her, Chide, Adonai, and their friends, and they were laughing and pointing at her. Chide's smirk deepened as he crossed his arms. "You really thought I would want someone like you?" The group erupted into laughter, their voices echoing across the riverbank. Chioma's face burned with shame. Just as she turned to flee, Chide's smirk widened. He stepped forward, the crowd parting for him. His smirk turned cruel. "Let's make sure you remember this." Before she could react, he shoved her, hard. Chioma stumbled backward, her arms flailing as she lost her footing. With a loud splash, she hit the cold river, the water swallowing her scream. Her freshly brushed hair, the small effort she had made to make herself presentable, was instantly ruined, clinging to her face in wet, tangled strands. Laughter erupted even louder as she struggled to stand, soaked, shivering, humiliated beyond words. Adonai threw her head back in laughter. Look at her. She actually thought she had a chance. Tears mixed with river water as Chioma scrambled onto the muddy bank, her entire body trembling. The world spun. The laughter rang in her ears like a cruel song. How could she have been so stupid? She turned and ran, their laughter chasing her all the way home. She burst into her tiny storeroom, slammed the door shut, and collapsed onto her mat. Her heart ached, her soul shattered. She pressed her hands over her ears as if trying to block out their voices. But she couldn't. "You really thought I would want someone like you?" Chioma rocked back and forth. "I wish I was beautiful. I wish I was beautiful. I wish they could see me." Her aunt's words rang in her head. "No man will ever want to marry a cripple. You will always be alone." Chioma fell asleep, distraught, whispering over and over, "I wish I was beautiful," dreaming of a life she wished she had. Chioma drifted into a deep sleep, her subconscious still reeling from the sting of humiliation. But instead of the familiar darkness of exhaustion, she felt warmth, soft, inviting. A gentle breeze caressed her skin, carrying the sweet scent of jasmine and lavender. It felt nice. Her lips curled slightly as she stirred, stretching against silk sheets. Silk? Her eyes fluttered open, and she nearly laughed at what she saw. A massive bed adorned with golden embroidery, a bedroom larger than her entire home in the village, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a dazzling city skyline. She sat up, blinking in amusement. She knew she was dreaming. She'd had many dreams over the years, but this one felt different. What kind of dream is this? She mused. Throwing her legs over the side of the bed, she gasped. Her legs weren't thin and frail. They were long, smooth, elegant. Her usually claw-like toenails, pedicured, her hands, delicate, soft, well-groomed, and manicured. Across the vast bedroom stood a long oval mirror. Desperate to make sense of what was happening, she rushed toward it. There she was, standing tall, her back no longer curved. It was her, but not her. The reflection staring back was breathtaking. A tall, stunning woman with glowing brown skin, full lips, and thick, cascading black hair. Chioma ran her hands through it, closing her eyes at its silky texture. Next to the mirror sat a vanity, upon which rested a beautiful gold hairbrush. She picked it up, marveling at its intricate design before running it through her long, luxurious hair. Her nightgown shimmered like liquid gold. Chioma giggled, turning her face from side to side in the mirror, examining her new features. This is a good dream, she decided with a nod. Spinning, she watched in delight as her gown flowed effortlessly around her. She was beautiful, she was rich, and best of all, she wasn't Chioma anymore. Then, the noises outside caught her attention. She ran to the window. Her knees buckled as she took in the sight before her, towering buildings, the hum of traffic below. She was in the city. Yes, she whispered in awe. She had always dreamed of coming to the city one day. She stood there marveling at the skyline, her heart pounding with excitement. A knock at the door made her freeze. "Cha-Cha, are you awake?" A deep, familiar voice called from the other side. Chioma's heart skipped. Chide? It couldn't be. She clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a laugh. Her dream had given her the perfect fantasy. I should go along with this, she thought, amusement dancing in her eyes. Why waste a good dream? If I can't have him in real life, I'll have him in my dreams. Before she could respond, the door opened, and there he was. Chide stepped inside, but not the Chide she knew. He wasn't sneering, he wasn't laughing at her. Instead, he smiled, softly, warmly, his eyes lighting up at the sight of her. "You had me worried, baby," he said, walking toward her. "Did you sleep well?" Chioma nearly burst out laughing. "Baby." She covered her mouth, biting down a grin. This was the same boy who had thrown her into the river, yet here he was, looking at her as if she was the only girl in the world. Dreams truly were magical. She decided to play along. Tilting her head slightly, she let her lips curl into a slow, confident smile. "I slept wonderfully," she purred, barely recognizing her own voice. It was sultry, smooth, Cha-Cha's voice. Chide chuckled, stepping closer. "Good. I have something special planned for us today. I hope you're ready." Chioma raised an eyebrow. "Oh, this will be fun." "Of course, baby," she mused, waving a hand elegantly, saying it felt as awkward as it sounded. As Chide took her hand and kissed it gently, she barely contained another fit of laughter. Best dream ever. She had spent the day roaming around her penthouse apartment, the maids looking at her like she had gone mad. They had no idea she was village Chioma. They whispered behind her back, but she didn't care. This was her dream. Cha-Cha, stood in front of the full-length mirror, admiring herself once more. This dream world was intoxicating, an escape beyond anything she had ever imagined. Here, she was someone. She was beautiful, loved, adored. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Chide had promised her a surprise, and she was eager to see what Dream Chide had in store for her. Running her fingers over the silk and velvet, she marveled at the richness of the fabrics. A dream indeed. After selecting an elegant outfit that hugged her figure perfectly, she slipped into a pair of strappy heels. Never in her real life could she walk in such shoes. But here, she strode confidently as though she had worn them her entire life. When she stepped out of the elevator, Chide was waiting for her by a sleek gray sports car parked outside her apartment building. With a warm smile, he extended his hand, helping her in as if she were royalty. "Where are we going?" she asked playfully, settling into the plush leather seat. Chide smirked, his gaze full of admiration. "You'll see, my love. It's a surprise." My love. Chioma could have melted. The car cruised through the city, towering skyscrapers reflecting the golden sun. She took in the sights, basking in the elegance of it all. This was the life she was meant to have. She wished she would never wake up. When they arrived at an exclusive restaurant, Chide led her inside, past rows of tables where well-dressed patrons turned to admire them. They were the center of attention. She was the center of attention. She was seen. She was led to a private rooftop section where the view of the city stretched out before her, glistening under the setting sun. A saxophonist played softly in the background as a waiter poured her a glass of expensive wine. Chide reached across the table, taking her hand. "I've never met anyone like you, Cha-Cha. You are perfect." Chioma felt her heart swell. Perfect. She had never been called perfect before, not even close. Lifting her glass, she took a slow sip. "This is the best dream I've ever had," she murmured, sighing in satisfaction. Chide chuckled. "A dream?" She nodded, grinning. Of course, nothing this perfect could ever be real. His expression shifted slightly, a flicker of something she couldn't quite place. But then, he smiled again. "Then let's make it last as long as possible." And Chioma agreed. Because why would she ever want to wake up? Chioma woke up the next morning with a smile on her face. For the first time in her life, waking up didn't feel like a curse. The moment her eyes fluttered open, she remembered the glitz, the glamour, the admiration. Cha-Cha's life. It still felt so real, lingering like the scent of perfume after someone had left the room. She lay on her mat, staring up at the cracked ceiling, letting the warm memory wash over her. Last night had been magical. Turning onto her side, she curled up, hugging herself. She could still feel the softness of silk sheets, still hear the way Chide's voice softened when he spoke to her, still see the way people looked at her with admiration instead of disgust. A giggle bubbled up inside her. It was just a dream, but it was hers. The loud clatter of a bucket outside her room made her flinch. "Lazy girl, get up. There's work to do." Her aunt's shrill voice shattered the moment, yanking her back to reality. Chioma sighed, but didn't let her smile fade. For the first time ever, she had something to look forward to. She jumped out of bed, feeling lighter. The usual dread of facing the day was gone. Instead, she hurried through her chores, scrubbing, washing, sweeping, without hesitation. The sooner she finished, the sooner she could go to sleep. Her aunt eyed her suspiciously as she worked. "What is all of this? You're not dragging your feet today," she muttered, folding her arms. Chioma didn't answer. She just smiled to herself and kept going. By evening, when she set down the last bucket of water, her hands were sore, but her heart was full. She ate dinner in silence, unfazed by her uncle's usual insults. Her mind was already somewhere else, in another world. "Finished eating already?" her aunt asked, eyeing her. "You're not asking for more food?" "I'm full, Ma," Chioma said simply, rising from the table. "Good night," her aunt scoffed. "Must be possessed. And who do you think is clearing this table, huh? Chioma quickly cleared the table, washed the dishes, and ran her aunt's bath, all while a barrage of insults rained down on her. But she didn't care. She had better things waiting for her. She hurried to her room, shutting the door behind her. Her heart raced with excitement. Lying down, she squeezed her eyes shut, willing sleep to come faster. She needed to go back to Cha-Cha. The moment she drifted off, the transformation was instant. Gone was the tiny, cramped room with its thin mat and leaking roof. She was back in the penthouse, wrapped in satin sheets. Stretching luxuriously, she grinned as she sat up. Back where she belonged. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A phone. She had a phone? She grabbed it eagerly, excitement bubbling in her chest. A group message popped up on the screen. Girls' night tonight. Don't be late, Cha-Cha. Friends. Chioma smiled to herself. She had friends. A soft knock sounded at the door. Rise and shine, sleepyhead. We have a busy day ahead. A cheerful voice rang out from behind the door. Chioma hesitated, then grinned. Coming, she called, sliding out of bed. The day had just begun, and she had a new life to live. Sliding into a deep red dress that hugged her figure perfectly, she twirled in front of the mirror. Everything about this world was perfect. The concierge called, Madam, your visitors are waiting for you downstairs, Ma. Adane, Lisa, and Tasha were here. Wait, Adane? From the village? Oh, this I gotta see, she said, rushing to the elevator. The most popular girl in the village, in her dream. And not just that, she was her best friend. Chioma could barely contain her amazement. The moment she slid into the seat, her friends erupted in cheers. Finally, our queen has arrived, Adane teased, tossing Cha-Cha a playful wink. Lisa leaned over, adjusting a curl in Cha-Cha's hair. You look stunning, Tasha grinned, holding up a bottle of champagne. Tonight we celebrate, to the most fabulous girl we know. Chioma laughed, soaking in their love. This was the life. The car pulled up to an exclusive nightclub where the city lights shimmered like diamonds beneath them. No waiting in line, no being ignored. The moment they stepped in, heads turned. People whispered her name with admiration. The bouncer greeted her personally, ushering them to a private VIP section. Drinks flowed, music pulsed. Cha-Cha felt alive. She danced, laughed, and for the first time in her life, she felt like she truly belonged. Then, something changed, a familiar presence. Chide. She spotted him across the room, standing by the bar, watching her. His gaze was intense. He wasn't smiling, wasn't enjoying himself. He was simply watching. Cha-Cha blinked, momentarily confused. Why is he here? Lisa muttered under her breath. Cha-Cha raised a brow, puzzled. Chioma could feel Cha-Cha's discomfort in her chest, but she didn't understand it. How romantic, she thought. He followed me here? He must really love me. She bit her lip, warmth spreading through her. He wanted her. He needed to be close to her. That had to be it. Yet, something felt off. For the briefest second, she noticed something strange. Cha-Cha, the part of her that belonged in this world, was not happy to see him. A flicker of unease stirred in her heart, but Chioma ignored it. It's just my dream playing tricks on me. As if sensing her thoughts, Chide finally moved. He walked through the crowd, heading straight toward her. The music and laughter faded into the background as he approached, his eyes locked onto hers. Don't look like that. I just wanted to make sure you were safe, he murmured, wrapping an arm around her waist and gently pulling her away from her friends. Chioma melted into him. This was how love was supposed to feel. She only smiled and leaned closer. Best dream ever. The next morning, Cha-Cha stretched luxuriously beneath the soft silk sheets, sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains of her penthouse bedroom. She should have had a hangover, but it was her dream and she didn't. A warm arm was draped over her waist. She turned her head slightly and smiled. Chide was still asleep beside her. It felt so real. She lay there for a moment, savoring it. She had never woken up feeling this happy before. In this world, she wasn't unwanted. She wasn't mocked. She was adored. Chide stirred, pulling her closer, his lips brushing against her forehead. "Morning, beautiful. I didn't want to wake you." She sighed happily. "I could get used to this." Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She reached for it, her heart swelling as she saw the notifications. Dozens of messages, compliments, invitations, people asking for her attention. She was the center of the universe here. "You're glowing," Chide murmured, running a hand down her arm. "I love seeing you like this." Chioma smiled, pressing against him. She could have asked him about his sudden appearance at the club last night and why he insisted she left with him. But this was her dream. This was the life she was meant to have. Chioma's eyes snapped open to the dim light of her tiny room in the village. The contrast was jarring. The rough mat beneath her, the scent of damp earth, the distant bleating of goats. The dream was gone. A heavy sigh escaped her lips. She was back here. Again. She sat up, glancing around the familiar walls, frustration bubbling inside her. This place, this wasn't real. It couldn't be. She pulled her tiny, cracked mirror from beneath her mat and stared at her reflection. Even she couldn't stand to look at her own face, the life she had just left behind, the silk sheets, the love, the admiration. That was real. That was where she belonged. But little did Chioma know the horror that awaited her. "Chioma!" Her aunt's shrill voice cut through her thoughts. "You're still sleeping? Lazy girl, come and fetch water." Chioma gritted her teeth. Her reality felt like a punishment. She hurried through her chores, barely listening to her aunt's constant nagging. The day dragged on endlessly. She barely spoke to anyone, barely noticed the sun moving across the sky. All she wanted was for night to come. Her aunt watched her with narrowed eyes. "Why are you in such a hurry to sleep every day?" she muttered. "Maybe you should sleep forever, useless girl." Chioma barely heard her. She had better things waiting for her. That night, she all but threw herself onto her mat, shutting her eyes tightly, willing herself back. The moment she drifted off, the transformation was seamless. She was back in the penthouse, back in luxury, back where she belonged. Her phone buzzed. Adane, Lisa, and Tasha had already made plans for the day. Shopping, brunch, spa treatments. Chioma grinned. This was her life now. The hours flew by in a haze of champagne, designer outfits, and endless laughter. Everything was perfect. And yet, something small, something barely noticeable, felt off. As they walked through a boutique, Adane turned to her with a smile. "We're going to have so much fun tonight." Cha-Cha nodded, running her fingers over a silk dress. A few minutes later, Adane turned to her again. "We're going to have so much fun tonight." Chioma blinked. The exact same words, the exact same tone. She looked at Lisa and Tasha, but neither of them reacted like anything was strange. Her heart thudded slightly. Had she imagined it? No. It happened. Time seemed to loop. She shook it off, plastering a smile on her face. Dreams do weird things. No biggie. Parents? She had parents? That night, Chide invited her and her parents to an exclusive restaurant, just the four of them. But when she saw them, her blood ran cold. Sitting at the elegant table were her aunt and uncle. Except they weren't the people she had known all her life. They were well-dressed, poised, wealthy-looking. Their clothes were pristine, their demeanor calm. They sat upright, their hands folded in their laps, and they were completely silent. Chioma's stomach twisted. Why are they here? This is my dream. They shouldn't be here. She forced a smile as Chide pulled out her chair for her. "Sit, my love. We're celebrating." Hesitantly, Chioma sat down, glancing at the silent figures across from her. They didn't speak, didn't react. They simply existed. "You know you belong here, don't you?" Chide said, his fingers trailing over her hand. Chioma swallowed hard, gripping her glass of wine. "Of course I do. This is my dream, after all." Chide's smile faltered, just for a second, barely noticeable. "A dream?" he repeated, tilting his head. "You think this is just a dream? Who's really asleep, my love?" Chioma laughed lightly, trying to shake the unease creeping up her spine. "Me, of course, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. I do." His fingers tightened around hers, just a little too long, a little too firm. She glanced at her so-called parents again, still silent, still watching. For the first time since stepping into this world, something felt wrong. When Chioma woke up the next morning in her village hut of a room, the euphoria wasn't there. The memory of the dinner haunted her. Why were her aunt and uncle her parents in the dream? I go to sleep to escape them, and yet they follow me. This is my dream. So why don't I understand it? She sat up slowly, rubbing her hands over her face. Something felt off. The memory of the dinner with Chide still lingered. But it wasn't just the dinner. It was them. Her aunt and uncle. Her breath hitched. She reached under her mattress, her fingers brushing over the rough woven mat. She froze. The cracked mirror she always kept hidden there was gone. Chioma's heart pounded as she threw the mat aside, searching frantically. It wasn't there. Her hands trembled. That mirror had always been there. It was the only thing she owned that was truly hers. The crack down the center was a reminder of who she was. And now, it was missing. She thought of her aunt. Why would her aunt come into her room and take her mirror, of all things? She sat back, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts, because in the back of her mind she knew her aunt didn't take the mirror. What is happening to me? Her aunt's voice snapped her out of it. "Chioma, are you deaf? Get up and fetch water." Chioma barely registered her words. She couldn't stop staring at the empty space where the mirror had been. She asked her aunt about the mirror and received a barrage of insults for even asking the question. That day, she went about her chores mechanically. She barely heard the chores thrown at her. Her mind was elsewhere. The missing mirror, the dinner, the dream that no longer felt like a dream. Then something else happened. As she scrubbed the clay floor outside, her fingers brushed against something smooth. She paused, looking down. A gold hairbrush. Chioma's breath hitched. She recognized it immediately. It was hers, but not hers. It was Cha-Cha's. The same brush she had used in the penthouse, the same one that had sat on top her luxury vanity. She grabbed it with shaking hands, staring at it as if it might disappear. How could it be here? This wasn't a coincidence. The dream was bleeding into reality. For the first time since she had discovered her new world, fear crawled up her spine. That night, she hesitated before lying down. For the first time, she didn't want to sleep. As she helped prepare dinner, her aunt turned to her and muttered, "We're going to have so much fun tonight." Chioma froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She had heard those exact words before. Not here, not in this world. Her hands trembled as she gripped the wooden spoon, stirring the pot with a growing sense of unease. She turned to her aunt slowly. What did you just say?" Her aunt scowled. "What? I didn't say anything. Stop staring at me like a fool and keep stirring." Chioma's stomach twisted. "I heard it. I know I did." It was the exact same line Adane had repeated in the boutique in Cha-Cha's world. Something was very, very wrong. Chioma sat on the edge of her mat, gripping the gold hairbrush tightly in her hands. She should have thrown it away. She should have burned it. But she couldn't. The weight of it felt too real, too solid. proof that her dream world was seeping into reality. She didn't want to sleep, not tonight, not ever. But exhaustion pulled at her limbs, heavy and unrelenting. She knew she couldn't fight it forever. The night stretched long, and she forced herself to stay awake, staring at the thin cracks in the wooden ceiling of her room. That night, despite her attempts to fight it, sleep won. But this time, she didn't wake up in Cha-Cha's luxurious penthouse. She woke up in the middle of a street. The air was thick with the scent of car exhaust and damp pavements. Neon lights flickered around her. She blinked, disoriented. She looked down at herself, her ragged village clothes, her bare feet against cold concrete. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. People passed by, not sparing her a single glance. No one saw her. Panic settled in her chest. Where am I? Her eyes darted around, searching for something, anything familiar. Then she saw it. A missing person poster. She stepped closer, her heart pounding. Her fingers trembled as she traced the picture. It was her. Beneath the photo, bold letters read, "Have you seen Cha-Cha?" Chioma's breath hitched. Cha-Cha is missing, but I'm Cha-Cha. Her mind reeled, confusion and fear slamming into her all at once. A chill crawled up her spine. Slowly she turned. Someone was watching her. A shadow lingered just beyond the dim glow of the streetlights. She couldn't make out their face, but she felt their eyes on her. Cold, calculating, waiting. The street around her flickered, the lights blurred. The shadow ran towards her. Chioma let out a yelp and ran. The cold morning air pressed against her damp skin. She sat up, heart racing, eyes darting around the room. The gold hairbrush was still beside her. Her fingers clenched into the mat beneath her, reaching for comfort, for something real. Her breath caught in her throat. A faint shadow moved past her window. She sat frozen, every nerve in her body on high alert. Was that real? Or was Cha-Cha finally bleeding into her world? The voice called to her. It was coming from under her mat, from the cracked mirror. Slowly, she picked it up. When she looked at the reflection, she almost collapsed. It was Cha-Cha looking back at her. "It's time to talk," she said. Cha-Cha was calm, her expression unreadable. Chioma demanded answers. Am I losing it? Did I curse myself for wishing away my life? No, Cha-Cha responded. Why are you in my mirror? Am I still dreaming? Chioma was beside herself with fear. Cha-Cha's voice was eerily steady. You were never dreaming, Chioma, because you were never real. Chioma's breath caught. Never real? She yelled. What are you talking about? You are just a dream. Cha-Cha's gaze didn't waver. No, Chioma, you are the dream, my dream. You are not real. I dreamed you up as a means to escape my life. Chioma shook her head, a nervous chuckle escaping her lips. This makes no sense. Here I am, in my room, and you're the one in the mirror, and you call me not real? Cha-Cha's expression remained blank. If you'll listen, I'll explain. And she did. Cha-Cha's world was falling apart. She had discovered that her so-called friends, led by Adonai, were plotting against her. They envied her beauty, her status, her wealth. She had overheard them planning to drug her at a party, extort her wealth, and ruin her beauty with acid. Meanwhile, her parents, Chioma's aunt and uncle, were cold, absent figures in her life. They had all the money in the world, yet no interest in their daughter. Months would pass without her seeing them. She was alone, vulnerable, and worse, it allowed a man like Chide to enter her life. He was possessive, dangerous, always watching. She didn't love him, but she knew that if he ever found out she loved another, he would kill her. Chide? Chioma said in disbelief. Yes, your precious Chide that you love so much has a dark side, a very dark side, Cha-Cha replied. I felt the way you feel about him, Chioma whispered. Chioma's stomach twisted. So you don't love Chide? Chioma had to confirm again. The thought was ludicrous to her. Who doesn't love Chide? Chioma wondered. Cha-Cha continued. I don't love him, but he will not take no for an answer. I am afraid of him. He's a dangerous man. Chioma's mind raced. She remembered the girls' night out, Adane and the others laughing, the music pulsing when Chide had shown up. She remembered the sick feeling she, or Cha-Cha, had upon seeing him. Desperate, Cha-Cha had sought the help of a shaman. The shaman had revealed a terrible truth. She would disappear in a matter of days. Death was coming for her, from her friends, from Chide. I just want to disappear, be invisible, go somewhere where no one will even notice me, she had pleaded. The shaman nodded. Disappearance comes with a price. He handed her a small vial of red liquid. Tonight, when you go to sleep, dream of the life you want, and it will be yours. Cha-Cha had agreed without hesitation. That night, as she drifted into sleep, she dreamed of a young disabled girl in a village. At first, she hated the thought of losing her beauty, of becoming weak. But it was too late. Her choices were simple. Become Chioma in the village, or stay in her world and be killed. And so, Chioma was born. But there was one catch. In Cha-Cha's dreams, Chioma desperately wanted Cha-Cha's life. And now, you will have your wish, Cha-Cha said, her voice emotionless. As I take over your life, you will take over mine. No, Chioma screamed. I don't want your life anymore. I want my own life. Cha-Cha's gaze sharpened. But you hate your life, Chioma. You wish to be seen. Not anymore. A small, knowing smile crept onto Cha-Cha's lips. The grass isn't always greener on the other side, huh? Please, Chioma pleaded, her hands trembling as she gripped the mirror. She was never real. Her life was the dream. Her body felt heavy, her vision blurring. She was fading, slipping into deep sleep. Cha-Cha's voice softened, almost tender. That's it, she whispered. Go to sleep. When you wake up, you will be Cha-Cha, and Chide will be all yours. No, please. Chioma tried to resist, but her memories were slipping away. Her hands were smoother now. Her skin glowed. She was changing. No, she whispered. When she opened her eyes, she was in the penthouse, her bedroom. Chioma sprang to the oval mirror, and staring back at her was not Cha-Cha, but her village self. A devilish smirk curled on her reflection's lips. Please don't do this to me, Cha-Cha, Chioma pleaded. Cha-Cha's voice was calm. You were never supposed to last forever, Chioma. I needed a way out. Chioma stumbled backward. You stole my life. Cha-Cha shook her head. No, you were just a dream, and a shaman helped me find a way out. I gave you my life, in return for yours. Chioma's breath hitched. You gave me your suffering, Cha-Cha. All this beauty, glamour, love, and wealth. It's all just suffering in disguise. Her reflection in the mirror faded, leaving only Cha-Cha's image. She touched her face. It was real. She was Cha-Cha now. She had the life she had prayed for, wished for, and it had become her worst nightmare. She regretted ever cursing her own life. Just then, her phone rang. The name on the screen. Michael. A voice frantic. Baby, get out of there. Chide knows everything. He knows about us. He's on his way to your penthouse now. Run. However, the bedroom door exploded open with a loud thud. Chide, a gun in his hand, fury on his face. Cha-Cha screamed. Then there was a deafening bang, a gunshot. Then silence. In the quiet village, Cha-Cha, now fully Chioma, walked through the market, blending effortlessly with the locals. She pulled her scarf tighter around her shoulders, her steps measured, her breath steady, her beauty, as she knew it to be, gone. Her parents, though mean and bossy, were there every day. and every day they communicated with her. It wasn't much, but she'd take it. Then she saw him. At first, her heart fluttered in fear. Chide. Her body stiffened instinctively. But all he saw was village Chioma. He walked past her, didn't stop, didn't look twice. He didn't acknowledge her. Cha-Cha let out a shaky breath, her lips pressing together as she continued walking, fading into the crowd, finally free. Hey, story lovers, what do you think about this one? It's a powerful lesson about longing for what someone else has, because sometimes all that glitters isn't gold, and the grass isn't always greener on the other side. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Until next time, bye for now.